Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games. We have the spiciest of brews here, Mississippi River, being run by the Mog Fanatic himself, leading out on Saprazan Scary. You know when your opponent shows you a Karuga at the start of the match that this is going to be something different. Birds of Paradise on the other side. Saprazan Scary, also not a card that you see very often. You'll notice all the lands in this Mississippi River deck are going to tap for 2 mana for the most part. There's going to be some utility lands in there, Boseiju and Otawara as well, but Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, and a host of rarely played soul lands. They are not here for a long time. They are here for a good time, as all of these lands only get 1 or 2 uses. Aether Channeler. Going to go ahead and cycle. New addition in Dominaria for Aluren. And there we go. Ancient Tomb into Sakashima's Protege. And the important part of this is it's going to go ahead and cascade. And there's only one thing it can hit in the deck, Creative Technique. This has a Storm-esque ability called Demonstrate. When you play it, there's going to be a trigger that allows you to create a copy for both you and an opponent. And the effect of this is going to be shuffling your library and then exiling cards till you reveal a non-land card. You can play it without paying its mana cost. So that is what Nat's going to be able to do right now. And he hits that Parasitic Strix. Haven't seen that one in these lists in quite a while. And hits Emrakul. And that'll be good enough. So first copy finds an Emrakul. Of course, the other option was hitting another Cascade creature or Creative Technique. Either way, that leads to more and more branches as you just end up getting a bunch of Emrakuls. Eventually, you'll actually hit 2 Emrakuls and shuffle all of the already used Creative Techniques into the graveyard. And just potentially queue up a whole bunch of turns. Not really necessary, though. Once you've got Emrakul on board, that's probably enough. You don't want to be giving your opponent a bunch of free cards, especially with a deck like Aluren. Dangerous combo deck in its own right. That can win at instant speed, unlike many other combo decks. Are actually casting Emrakul, so you are getting the extra turn, untapping not only with the Annihilator, but all of those Cascade creatures. What a motley crew of just ragtag magic cards, all 6 casting costs, janky stats. Occasional interactions that are meaningful. And for the most part, the main event is Emrakul, but, you know, if you already have lethal on board, nice to not have to keep digging. Now, you'll note that Creative Technique does require 2 counters to stop, as you've got the original and the copy. And the Cascade creatures are actually, I mean, they kind of need to be stopped as well. Like, if you just allow your opponent to repeatedly cast Cascade creatures, they will eventually win with them, even though their stat lines are absolutely terrible for their mana values. Still good enough if all you're doing is trying to stop the deck from going off. Baleful Strix, not likely to be super relevant. Got a Sulfur Falls, I believe it is. Sulfur Vent. And it's a turn 3. Here we go. Hitting Creative Technique. And 1 copy queued up along with the original. So Nat going to be able to mill here. I believe we saw a counterspell in hand. And reveals one off the top of the deck. All right, so actually going to be able to shut this down, force a negation, and force a will. probably should have forced a negation to the original. Trying to think that through. Yes, if you're cold to Emrakul, guess you'd rather. I mean, Creative Technique is probably a better card to have in the deck if you're playing Aluren. Alright, so Thoughtseize leaves just mana in hand out of Birds of Paradise. It looks like Aluren is in hand. So next turn could just be a wrap. Aluren into Cavern Harpy. And Otawara bouncing the Aluren, buying an extra turn. It's going to come back down. So turning sideways. And this should end it now. Otawara able to buy a little bit of time. Regardless Agent cascades into Brainstorm. Very likely. I mean, only 8 life, though. At least keeps it interesting. So this Cavern Harpy is going to allow Shardless Agent to get picked up and replayed, each time cascading till you hit a 2 or less casting cost card, which is going to be a cantrip of some sort, most likely. Well, actually, a Thoughtseize. That's kind of a whiff here. Garuga was added to hand last turn. An extra blue card. Not for Force of Will. You can't actually run that, but for Commandeer, potentially. Leovold, all of these creatures free. None of Monk Fanatic's cards are going to be free. All of those creatures costing 6, not having any affinity for Aluren whatsoever. That is a full grip, full board. 13 life. And no help off the top of the deck. So we're on to game number 3. So Aluren just going wide. They're actually failing to completely combo off. Running out of life. Now, if you find Uro, I'm pretty sure Nat's got Uro in there. I believe we've already covered one of his matches with this list recently. So hitting Uro completely changes that, as then you'll be able to gain 3 life with every iteration. Essentially, I mean, it absolutely guarantees you're not going to fumble at that point, as you can just net 2 life and a card and a land drop with each use of the Cavern Harpy instead of just paying a life to cascade or draw a card. Tapped land and saying go. It's kind of like a Belcher list that just waits 3 turns to go off, but is much harder to stop. But I mean, this thing is going off on turn 3. Thoughtseize takes 1 Cascade creature, but there's still a Creative Technique in hand. Thoughtseize sees just a bunch of lands in the creative technique. Land destruction also going to be decent against this deck as it sets it back a full turn. Repeated wastelands would be very unpleasant to play against. Burrow finds a singular force of will. Already got the blue card to go along with it. Ponder. Not happy with any of that. At this point. Pretty decent shape with nothing in Mog's hand. Force of will. I mean, that's going to stop. I mean, actually not very much. Like, you still have to hit another counterspell off the top. You actually can't set it up with Brainstorm because you do shuffle your library before you start exiling cards to the creative technique. Burrow comes back. Got a card draw, land drop, win condition established. And those permanents not inconsequential at all. You can get Mog low enough. Multiple extra turns might be necessary with the Emrakul. And Baleful Strix could actually block it. So, I mean, Mississippi River definitely can go way over the top. Interesting. The Seiju just being played. And I think this is a Maelstrom Wanderer. So Cascading, finding Sakashima. That finds a creative technique. And more cascading to go. So still another cascade. Oh, and he demonstrates it. Oh no. So Aluren is being put in, and that's actually going to be a wrap. Wow. All right. What a blowout. So demonstrating creative technique allowed Nat to put in his own Aluren. Now there was still a cascade trigger, and you can just resolve creative technique without copying it. So that is really interesting. What a crazy finish with two absolutely amazing legacy decks.